The sun rose slowly over the wide military base, throwing long golden rays across the training ground. The morning air carried the sharp scent of dust and metal, mixed with the faint echo of barking dogs from the K-9 yard. It was the beginning of a new training day, and for the soldiers it felt like any other. But for one Navy SEAL named James Cole, this day would become something he would never forget. Cole stood quietly near the fence, watching a line of military dogs being led out by their handlers. He had worked with K-9 units before, but something about this place felt different. These dogs were not regular service animals. They were elite, trained for missions where hesitation meant death. Among them was one that stood out, a large German shepherd with deep amber eyes. His name was Rex. Even from a distance, Cole could sense the dog's tension. Rex moved with power, but there was something in his stare that spoke of pain and confusion. The training officer, Sergeant Miller, shouted instructions as the handlers prepared the course. Miller was known for being hard and cold, a man who believed fear made both dogs and men stronger. "Rex," he barked, "no mistakes today." The dog's ears flattened slightly, but he stood tall, ready for the next order. Miller turned to the visiting Navy SEAL team and gave a short briefing about the exercise. "You'll witness the obedience test today," he said proudly. "This dog doesn't back down, not even from a SEAL." Cole folded his arms, half curious and half uneasy. He had seen dogs like Rex before, animals trained to obey any command, even against their instincts. As Miller spoke, Cole's eyes stayed fixed on the dog. There was something familiar about the way Rex's tail moved, the scar on his ear, the faint twitch when he heard loud sounds. But Cole brushed it off. He'd worked with hundreds of dogs during his missions. It couldn't be anything more. The morning grew hotter. The handlers prepared the mock battlefield, sandbags, barrels, and a wooden wall. The goal was simple: test Rex's obedience under pressure. Cole's unit had been asked to participate as part of a demonstration, and Cole himself was chosen to act as the intruder. He didn't mind. It was routine, a way to show cooperation between divisions. Still, he noticed how the other handlers stepped back whenever Rex was near. They whispered among themselves that Rex was unpredictable, that he didn't trust anyone, not even Miller. The only thing that kept him under control was the sharp sound of command. Cole suited up in the thick, padded protective gear and walked toward the training zone. He could feel dozens of eyes watching him, the SEALs, the K-9 trainers, and the officers. He kept his expression calm, though a strange unease settled in his chest. Rex stood 20 feet away, his leash tight in the handler's grip. His breathing was heavy, his muscles tense, but his eyes, those amber eyes, never left Cole. Miller raised his hand, ready to start the test. "This is how we separate good dogs from great ones," he said, his voice booming across the field. "Rex is one of our best. He's been through combat drills, live fire zones, and chaos. Let's see if he follows through today." Cole gave a small nod, signaling he was ready. The world around him seemed to slow down. Even the wind stopped moving. The command rang out clear and sharp. "Attack!" The leash snapped free. Rex burst forward, kicking up sand, his paws pounding the ground. The soldiers around held their breath, expecting impact in seconds. But then something strange happened. Midway through the charge, Rex stopped. His ears lowered, his pace slowed, and he let out a soft, confused whine. The handlers shouted again, repeating the order, but Rex didn't move. He stood frozen, staring straight at Cole. A heavy silence fell over the field. Miller frowned, shouting louder, "Rex! Attack!" The dog trembled, his tail tucked low. Instead of lunging, he took a hesitant step forward, then another, until he was standing just a few feet away from Cole. His chest rose and fell fast, but his eyes had softened. Cole could hear the whisper of his own breath inside his helmet. He didn't move. Something about the dog's gaze felt painfully familiar. The other soldiers exchanged confused looks. Miller's voice grew more frustrated. "What's wrong with him?" "He never disobeys." One handler tried to approach, but Rex turned his head sharply and gave a low growl, not in anger but warning them to stay back. His attention went right back to Cole. Cole slowly lifted his visor, exposing his face. Rex's ears perked up instantly. A small whimper escaped his throat, almost like recognition. The dog's eyes shimmered as he took another step closer. Cole felt his heart pound. He removed his glove and slowly reached out a hand. The soldiers watching tensed, afraid the dog might attack, but Rex didn't. Instead, he gently pressed his nose into Cole's palm. The field went completely still. Cole crouched slightly, whispering softly, "Easy, boy. It's okay." His voice was low, careful, like he'd done this before. Rex leaned closer, tail beginning to move just a little. Cole noticed a mark on the dog's ear, a scar in the exact shape he remembered. His mind flashed back to a night years ago under burning skies overseas. A collapsed building, cries in the dark, and a dog pinned under rubble. He had lifted that dog out with his bare hands while bullets flew around them. The dog had been bleeding badly, scared but alive. He had carried him to safety and named him Shadow. But after an explosion, Shadow was lost. The record said the dog didn't survive. Now, looking into Rex's eyes, Cole wasn't so sure. Miller barked another order, snapping Cole back to the present. "Step away from the animal." But Cole didn't move. The dog pressed closer, rubbing against Cole's arm like an old friend reunited after a lifetime apart. The other handlers froze. None of them had ever seen Rex behave this way, not once. The rest of the SEAL team stood behind the fence, stunned into silence. One of them muttered, "Is he hugging him?" Another whispered, "That dog knows him." No one could explain what they were seeing, but every man there could feel it. It wasn't just training or instinct, it was memory. Rex let out a soft bark, his tail now wagging faster, and for the first time in years, his body relaxed. Cole gently scratched behind his ear and said quietly, "You remember, don't you?" The dog's eyes closed halfway as if answering yes. The base commander, who had been watching the test from the control tower, stepped forward slowly, disbelief written all over his face. He turned to Miller and said, "Cancel the next drill. Something extraordinary is happening here." Miller didn't argue. For once, even his harsh voice softened. He looked at Rex and then at Cole, realizing that this wasn't disobedience, it was recognition. The K-9 unit, known for discipline and control, had just witnessed something no amount of training could ever create. A bond stronger than orders. A loyalty that had survived time, pain, and war. The rest of the base was quiet for a long time after that. Some soldiers whispered among themselves, trying to understand. Others just watched as Cole knelt beside Rex, petting him gently. No one dared interrupt. In that moment, on that dusty training field, rank and command didn't matter. It was just a man and a dog, two souls who had found each other again when no one thought they would. The training field stayed silent long after the test ended. No one moved or spoke for several minutes. The dog, Rex, sat quietly beside Navy SEAL James Cole, his head resting against the man's leg like he had finally found peace after years of waiting. The handlers whispered among themselves, still trying to understand what had just happened. Sergeant Miller, known for his rough voice and sharp commands, looked lost for words. He had trained hundreds of dogs, but he had never seen one disobey an order out of love. Cole took a slow breath, still kneeling beside Rex. The dog's eyes followed his every move. "Easy, buddy," Cole whispered softly. "You're safe now." The dog responded with a low sound, somewhere between a whine and a sigh, as if he truly understood every word. The crowd that had gathered began to thin out. The base commander, a tall man with a calm face, finally stepped forward and said quietly, "Sergeant Miller, bring both of them to my office." The walk across the base felt long. The sun was higher now and the air shimmered with heat. Cole walked beside Rex while Miller followed a few steps behind, his usual confident pace replaced with slow, uncertain steps. Other soldiers stopped their work to stare. It was not every day that a K-9 dog broke commands, but what they had seen felt different. It wasn't failure, it was something that touched everyone who watched. When they entered the commander's office, the cool air from the ceiling fan greeted them. The commander closed the door and motioned for Cole and Miller to sit. Rex sat on the floor near Cole's boots, alert but calm. The commander's voice was quiet. "Sergeant, explain." Miller hesitated. "Sir, I don't know what to say. The dog has never ignored an attack order before. He's one of our toughest. I can't explain it." He glanced at Rex, almost like the animal had betrayed him. "He's never shown affection to anyone here." The commander turned to Cole. "Petty Officer Cole, what happened out there?" "The dog seems to know you." Cole's hands rested on his knees. He looked at Rex and then back at the commander. "Sir, I'm not sure, but I think I know this dog. Years ago, overseas during an operation, I rescued a K-9 that was trapped under rubble. He was injured but alive. I got him to safety, but later our unit was separated. I was told the dog didn't make it. He was listed as K947 deceased. His voice grew quieter. That dog's name was Shadow. The commander's eyes widened slightly. You think this is the same animal? Cole nodded slowly. Yes, sir. The scar under his left ear. It's identical. And when I spoke to him, he responded like he remembered my voice. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the fan. Miller shifted uncomfortably, rubbing his hands together. With respect, sir, this dog's record says he was rescued from a crash site 2 years ago. He was reclassified as Rex. The old files didn't say where he came from before that. The commander opened his computer and began typing. After a few minutes of checking records, he looked up. According to this, he said slowly, Rex was found in an abandoned base overseas. He was half-starved, but he had a military tag burned into his collar, K947. The commander looked at both men. It appears you're right, Cole. Cole felt his chest tighten. Rex tilted his head as if sensing the emotion. You've been through so much, Cole whispered, gently scratching behind the dog's ear. The animal closed his eyes for a moment, a small sign of trust that no one in the room missed. Miller's tone softened for the first time. Sir, I think this explains why Rex never bonded with anyone here. Maybe he was waiting. Maybe he remembered his handler. The commander nodded. Memory runs deep, even in animals trained for war. He stood and looked out the window for a moment before speaking again. Cole, I want you to stay on base for a few days. Let's observe the dog's behavior with you. If this connection helps his recovery, we'll report it to the command center. Cole agreed quietly. When he left the office, Rex walked beside him without a leash. Soldiers along the corridor stopped and smiled. Some even saluted jokingly. It was like the whole base had witnessed something human in a place built for discipline. That evening, Cole sat outside the barracks under the fading orange sky. He placed a bowl of water beside Rex, who lay stretched on the ground, his fur catching the last light of sunset. Cole looked at the dog with quiet amazement. You really made it, didn't you? He murmured. Rex raised his head, his eyes soft and calm. It was clear he recognized the voice that had once saved him. Memories drifted back into Cole's mind. Dust, fire, the smell of smoke, and the terrified eyes of a dog buried beneath the rubble. He remembered how that dog had whimpered when he first reached for him, then slowly trusted his touch. That bond had formed under chaos, and now, years later, it had returned stronger than ever. Over the next 2 days, handlers came to watch the strange reunion. They couldn't believe how obedient Rex had become when Cole was around. The dog followed him everywhere, during meals, drills, even when Cole went to the gym. The same dog who once refused every command now sat patiently at Cole's feet, eyes full of peace. Sergeant Miller watched from a distance, quietly amazed. One afternoon he approached Cole and said, You've done what none of us could. You gave him back his trust. Cole smiled faintly. Maybe he just needed someone who remembered him as more than a weapon. Word of the story spread across the base quickly. Soldiers from other divisions came by to see the pair. Some laughed softly, saying it was like a movie. Others simply stood in silence, touched by the sight of a soldier and a dog reunited by fate. On the 3rd day, the commander requested one final test. He wanted to see if Rex's change was permanent. Cole agreed, though he was nervous about how Rex might react. The field was prepared again just as before. This time Cole wasn't wearing protective gear. He stood in the middle of the yard, surrounded by officers and handlers. Rex was on the other end, leashed loosely. The command was given again, the same sharp word that had once sent Rex into attack mode. Attack! The crowd held its breath. Rex froze for half a second. Then, instead of lunging, he ran forward, but not to attack. He ran straight into Cole's open arms, tail wagging, tongue out, eyes bright with joy. The crowd burst into surprised laughter and applause. Even Miller smiled, shaking his head. Well, that's a first. Cole crouched, hugging the dog tightly. Good boy, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Rex barked softly, almost as if answering. The commander smiled and said, I think that settles it. This dog isn't just any K9. He's found his partner. From that day, Rex's training record was rewritten. The note in his file changed from uncontrollable to rehabilitated under original handler. Cole was assigned to continue working with him, officially marking the return of a bond lost to war. That night, Under a calm starlit sky, Cole sat beside Rex again, his hand resting gently on the dog's neck. "You waited all this time," he said softly. Rex looked up and gave a quiet, contented sigh, laying his head on Cole's lap. The night was still, peaceful, and full of meaning. For Cole, it wasn't just a reunion. It was a second chance for both of them. And for everyone who had seen it happen, it was proof that loyalty never dies. It just waits for the right moment to return. The next morning began with a cool wind blowing across the base. The early light touched the training field where the grass glistened with dew. Everything seemed calm, yet the story of Rex and Cole had spread through every corner of the camp. Soldiers whispered about it in the cafeteria, and handlers from nearby bases sent messages asking if the rumors were true. A dog that once attacked anyone who came close had suddenly turned gentle, only because of one man. Cole didn't care about the whispers. He sat on the grass beside Rex, brushing his coat slowly. The big German shepherd leaned against him, eyes half closed, tail moving lazily. It was clear that Rex had changed. There was no trace of the restless aggression everyone once feared. He followed Cole everywhere, quietly, calmly, with a kind of silent trust that came only from deep memory. Sergeant Miller watched them from the fence. He couldn't deny what he saw. A week ago, Rex had been a problem. Now he was like a completely new dog. Miller finally walked over and stopped near them. "He doesn't growl at me anymore," he said with a faint smile. Cole looked up and nodded. "He's learning that he's safe now. He remembers what it's like to be cared for." Miller crouched beside Rex and extended a cautious hand. The dog sniffed his fingers, then licked them gently. Miller's eyebrows lifted. "I'll be damned," he murmured. "You really are something, aren't you, boy?" For the next few days, Cole was asked to help train the other dogs since the officers wanted to study what had changed in Rex. He agreed, though he wasn't sure what he could teach. "It's not training," he said quietly to the handlers. "It's trust," and he meant it. Every time he gave Rex a command, he did it with calm confidence, never shouting, never forcing. The dog obeyed every word, not because of fear, but because he wanted to. During one afternoon session, a group of visiting officers came to observe. They watched as Cole led Rex through a complex obstacle course. The dog leapt over barriers, crawled under wires, and followed every hand signal perfectly. At the end, Rex returned to Cole's side and sat proudly, tail wagging. The officers clapped softly, impressed. One of them whispered, "That dog would walk through fire for him." Later, as Cole walked Rex back to the kennel area, he stopped beside a shaded bench. The memories of their past together flooded his mind again. The dusty ruins, the cries of soldiers, and the moment he had pulled the dog from the rubble. "I thought you were gone forever," Cole said quietly. Rex pressed his head against Cole's knee as if to say, "I never forgot." That night, as the sun went down, Cole was called to the commander's office again. Rex followed at his heel, walking proudly. The commander greeted them both with a smile. "Cole," he said, "headquarters has reviewed your report and the training footage. They're calling this case one of the most remarkable human-animal bonds they've ever seen." Cole blinked in surprise. "Sir, I didn't do much. He just remembered me." The commander shook his head. "You did more than you think. You reminded all of us that these animals are more than tools. They're living beings with hearts and memories." Then his expression turned thoughtful. "There's one more thing. The higher-ups want to see if Rex can return to field service, with you as his official handler. If he's truly bonded to you, it could be a breakthrough for the K-9 division." Cole looked down at Rex, who was sitting quietly beside him, ears perked, watching every movement. "If he's willing, I'll be honored," Cole said softly. The next morning, the test began. It was meant to simulate real combat conditions. Noise, shouting, gunfire echoes, and chaos. The air was thick with tension as soldiers prepared the area. Some doubted that Rex could handle it. After all, he'd been unstable for so long. When the test started, explosions of sound filled the field. Rex stiffened, his ears twitching, but Cole's calm voice cut through the noise like a steady beacon. "Rex, stay," he commanded. The dog didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on Cole, waiting for the next word. "Forward," Cole shouted. Instantly, Rex darted ahead, fast but focused, weaving through obstacles, ignoring the chaos. When Cole whistled, he returned at once, stopping exactly where told. Everyone watching stood silent. It was flawless. The commander standing near the back turned to Miller. I've never seen a response that perfect, he said quietly. Miller nodded, unable to hide his amazement. Neither have I, sir. After the drill, Cole crouched beside Rex and hugged him gently. You did great, partner, he said, patting his neck. Rex barked softly in reply, tail wagging so hard it stirred the dust. From that day forward, Cole and Rex became inseparable. They trained together, ate together, and even slept in the same quarters. The other soldiers called them the bonded pair. No one laughed at the name. It was said with respect. But one afternoon, while walking near the edge of the base, Cole noticed something unusual. A transport truck pulled up and a new group of handlers arrived. They were talking quietly with Miller holding a file marked reassignment. Cole's stomach tightened as he approached. What's going on? He asked. Miller looked uncomfortable. Cole, they're reassigning Rex to another division. Orders from above. Cole froze. What, after everything? I argued against it, Miller said quickly. But they think his loyalty to one person makes him unsuitable for general training. They want him moved to a research unit. Cole looked down at Rex, who was standing close to him, sensing the tension. He's not a subject to study, Cole said firmly. He's a soldier. He's family, Miller sighed. I know, Cole, believe me, I do. But the paperwork's been signed. Cole clenched his fists but stayed calm. Then I'm going to talk to the commander. He went straight to the office, Rex following close. The commander looked up as Cole entered. I know why you're here, he said softly. I tried to stop it too. The higher command believes Rex's attachment could interfere with future missions. Cole's voice was steady but full of quiet emotion. Sir, that dog's loyalty is the reason he survived. It's the reason I did too. If loyalty is a weakness, then we're teaching the wrong lessons. The commander was silent for a long time. Then he said, I'll make one last appeal, but I can't promise anything. Cole nodded. Thank you, sir. He returned to the barracks and sat beside Rex. The dog laid his head on Cole's lap, eyes half closed. The night air was cool and the sky was full of stars. Cole ran his hand through Rex's fur and said softly, No matter what happens, I'll find you. I promise. The next morning, trucks arrived. Rex was loaded into one of them, calm but confused. Cole stood by the gate as the engine started. The dog looked out through the small window, their eyes meeting for one last moment before the truck rolled away. The soldiers nearby stood in silence. Miller placed a hand on Cole's shoulder. I'm sorry, son, he said quietly. Cole nodded, unable to speak. The field felt empty again, like something irreplaceable had been taken from it. But deep down he knew this wasn't the end. Somewhere inside he believed that fate wouldn't bring them together twice only to separate them forever. And far down the road, inside the truck, Rex sat quietly, his gaze fixed on the direction they had come from. He didn't whine or bark. He simply waited, because in his heart he knew his human would come for him again. The truck carrying Rex disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind a heavy silence. James Cole stood at the gate long after the dust had settled. The air felt still and the base, usually loud with engines, drills, and commands, seemed unusually quiet. For days after Rex was taken, Cole went through his duties like a shadow. His teammates noticed, but no one said a word. They knew what that dog meant to him. Rex had been more than a mission partner. He had been a reminder of survival, loyalty, and trust in a world that often forgot such things. Now, the kennel where Rex once slept stood empty, and every time Cole passed by it, his heart tightened. In the research facility miles away, Rex was being studied under controlled conditions. Scientists wanted to understand how memory and emotion affected military dogs. They called it Project Recall. But to Rex, it was just loneliness. The white walls, bright lights, and unfamiliar voices made him restless. He didn't bark or fight, he simply refused to cooperate. He didn't eat much. He ignored commands. When one handler tried to use a harsh tone, Rex just lay down, staring at the door. Every time a door opened, his ears lifted, hoping to see Cole. But it was never him. Back at the base, Sergeant Miller found Cole sitting outside one evening, staring at the sunset. You still thinking about him? He asked quietly. Cole gave a small nod. Every day. It's strange, Miller. I've been through firefights and deployments, but nothing feels as empty as this. Miller sighed and sat beside him. I talked to someone in logistics. That research unit's up north. They say Rex hasn't been responding well. He's quiet, almost like he's waiting. Cole's eyes lifted slightly. Waiting for what? Miller smiled faintly. You probably. That night, Cole couldn't sleep. The thought of Rex alone in a cold lab surrounded by strangers wouldn't leave his mind. He tried to focus on his work, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rex looking out that truck window. By dawn, he made up his mind. He went to the commander's office and asked for permission to visit the research facility. The commander leaned back in his chair. "Cole, this isn't a standard request. Those units don't allow outside visits easily." "I understand, sir," Cole said calmly, "but that dog was part of my unit once. If he's suffering, I want to help." The commander studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I'll make a few calls. Don't get your hopes up." 2 days later, Cole received approval for a short inspection visit, only 2 hours allowed inside. He didn't waste a moment. Early the next morning, he boarded a transport truck heading north. The ride was long and quiet, the road winding through empty fields and distant hills. When the facility finally came into view, it looked nothing like the base he'd left. Tall fences, security towers, and buildings painted in pale gray. When Cole stepped out, the guard checked his papers and led him through metal gates into the main complex. The air smelled of disinfectant and machinery. A woman in a white lab coat met him at the door. "You must be Officer Cole," she said with a polite but tired smile. "I'm Dr. Lane, supervisor here. The dog you're here to see, Rex, has been..." Difficult. Cole's chest tightened. "Can I see him?" Dr. Lane nodded. "Follow me." They walked down a long hallway until they reached a quiet room with glass walls. Inside, Rex was lying on the floor, motionless. His fur looked dull and his eyes, once full of life, seemed distant. Cole stopped at the window, his throat tightening. Dr. Lane spoke softly. "He doesn't respond to any handlers. He eats only when absolutely necessary. We tried giving him new partners, but he ignores them. It's like he's waiting for someone who isn't coming." Cole's voice was barely above a whisper. "He's waiting for me." Dr. Lane turned to him, surprised. "You think he remembers?" "I know he does," Cole said firmly. After a short discussion, she agreed to let him enter the enclosure under supervision. Cole stepped inside slowly, his boots echoing on the floor. The moment the door closed, Rex's ears twitched. His head lifted slightly. Cole stood still for a few seconds, afraid to speak. Then quietly he said, "Hey, partner." Rex froze. His body trembled. Then slowly he stood up. The scientists watching behind the glass whispered among themselves. Cole took one step closer. "It's me, boy." "It's okay." The silence broke. Rex let out a soft, broken sound, a mixture of a bark and a whine, and ran straight toward Cole. The impact almost knocked him off balance as Rex pressed his head into his chest, tail wagging wildly. Cole's arms went around the dog's neck, his eyes filling with tears he didn't bother to hide. "I told you I'd come back," he whispered. The people behind the glass stood frozen, stunned by what they were seeing. Dr. Lane's voice came through the intercom, full of disbelief. He hasn't moved like that in weeks." For the next hour, Rex refused to leave Cole's side. The dog ate his full meal for the first time in days and followed every command without hesitation. The scientists took notes quickly, realizing they were witnessing something remarkable. Proof that emotional memory could outlast even the strictest training. When it was time to leave, Cole's heart sank. He knelt beside Rex, stroking his fur gently. "I'll come back for you." "I promise," he said. Rex let out a low whine, his eyes filled with trust. Dr. Lane met Cole at the door. "He's not just any canine," she said softly. "He's bonded to you in a way we can't measure. I'll file a report recommending he be released from the study. It may take time, but I think you'll get him back." On the drive home, Cole looked out at the road ahead, feeling a mix of hope and worry. He didn't know how long the process would take, but he knew one thing: he would fight for Rex until the end. Days turned into weeks. Cole waited for the official decision, calling the facility every few days. Finally, one morning, a message arrived. "Request approved. K947 Rex will be released into your custody for permanent reassignment." Cole didn't even finish his coffee. He packed his gear, signed the papers, and drove north again. When he arrived, Rex was waiting outside with Dr. Lane, tail wagging and eyes bright. "He's been waiting since dawn," she said with a smile. Cole crouched down, and Rex jumped into his arms, barking happily. The whole facility staff came out to watch. It wasn't just a reunion. It was a moment of joy that touched everyone who saw it. As Cole led Rex back to the truck, Dr. Lane said softly, "Take care of him, Officer Cole. He's special." Cole smiled. He always has been. That evening, when they returned to the base, the soldiers gathered to welcome them back. Miller was the first to speak. "I knew you'd bring him home," he said proudly. Cole smiled down at Rex, who sat tall beside him. "He's not just home," Cole said softly. "He's where he belongs." The crowd cheered and Rex barked loudly, tail wagging like he understood every word. Later that night, Cole sat under the stars again, just like before. Rex lay beside him, head resting on his lap. The sky was clear and calm, and for the first time in months, everything felt right again. Cole whispered, "We made it back, buddy." Rex gave a small, happy bark, his eyes closing slowly. He didn't need words to answer. His presence said it all. Their bond had been tested by time, distance, and orders, but it never broke. And now, side by side, man and dog were finally home, together again. The night after Rex's return felt like peace had finally found its way back to the base. The sky was clear, the stars bright, and for the first time in many months there was laughter echoing through the camp again. Everyone seemed lighter, like they were sharing a quiet relief. The story of Cole and Rex had become a symbol of loyalty for the entire unit. Even soldiers who had never met them before came just to see the famous K9 who had refused to attack his old partner. Rex had settled into his old habits quickly. He slept beside Cole's bunk every night, guarding him the same way he used to during missions years ago. When Cole moved, Rex moved. When Cole stopped, Rex sat. Their bond was simple but strong, the kind that didn't need words. Every soldier in the camp respected it. The following morning, the base commander called Cole into his office once again. He was smiling when Cole entered. "I just got the official confirmation," he said. "Rex is now fully reassigned under your care. He's not just a K9 unit anymore. He's part of your team." Cole stood still for a second, then nodded slowly, emotion welling up in his chest. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." "You already haven't," the commander said. "You reminded this base what real loyalty looks like." Cole left the office feeling lighter than he had in years. He found Rex waiting outside, tail wagging as if he already knew the news. Cole crouched and said with a grin, "You're officially mine again, partner." Rex barked once, loud and proud, earning smiles from a few passing soldiers. In the days that followed, Cole and Rex trained together every morning. They didn't just practice commands, they ran obstacle courses, patrolled the perimeter, and even joined small drills. Rex had regained his strength completely. His fur shone again, his eyes bright with purpose. Everyone noticed how the dog's presence lifted morale around the base. When soldiers had a bad day, they would stop by the yard to play fetch with him, and Rex greeted everyone like an old friend. One afternoon, a group of young recruits gathered to watch Cole run Rex through a demonstration. Cole explained how patience and respect built trust stronger than fear. "A dog doesn't follow orders because of rank," he said, looking at them. "He follows the person who makes him feel safe." As he spoke, Rex performed each command perfectly. Sit, stay, heel, search, moving with smooth precision and confidence. The recruits clapped, some even cheering. Cole smiled, proud of his partner. Miller, standing nearby, crossed his arms and said quietly, "You were right all along, Cole. It was never about control. It was about faith." That evening, a quiet wind swept through the camp. The sun was low, painting the horizon gold and pink. Cole and Rex walked toward the edge of the base, watching the colors fade into dusk. Cole sat down on an old wooden bench and Rex rested beside him. "You know," Cole said softly, "some people spend their whole lives looking for loyalty like yours. Guess I got lucky." Rex tilted his head, then rested it gently on Cole's knee. Cole chuckled. "Yeah, you understand, don't you?" As the days turned into weeks, Rex and Cole became known far beyond their base. A journalist from the military press arrived to write about their story. Photos were taken, Rex sitting proudly beside Cole, both looking straight at the camera. The headline the next day read, "K9 dog refused orders because he remembered his seal." The story spread fast, reaching veterans, families, and even rescue organizations around the country. Messages of admiration poured in. People said the story gave them hope, that even in war, compassion could survive. But despite all the attention, Cole and Rex kept their routine simple. They trained, ate, worked, and rested together. Sometimes, on quiet nights, Cole would find himself thinking about everything they had been through, the missions, the separation, The reunion, and he realized something powerful. Every hardship had led them back to each other. One morning, an unexpected letter arrived from the headquarters. It invited Cole and Rex to a national K9 recognition ceremony. The message said they were being honored for extraordinary loyalty and service. Cole read it twice, then looked down at Rex, who wagged his tail like he already knew it was about him. The ceremony was held 2 weeks later at a large hall filled with soldiers, officers, and families. When Cole walked in with Rex by his side, the crowd stood and applauded. Rex's ears perked up at the sound, but he stayed calm and proud, walking perfectly beside Cole. When the announcer spoke their names, Cole knelt beside Rex as the commander pinned a small silver medal onto the dog's collar. The room filled with applause again. Cameras flashed, and for a brief moment, Rex barked joyfully, tail wagging as if thanking everyone. Cole smiled and said quietly, "You earned it, partner." After the ceremony, people came up to shake Cole's hand and pet Rex. Some of them were young handlers who said they wanted to train their dogs with more care, not fear. One of them said softly, "Your story changed the way I see these animals." "Sir," Cole nodded, feeling proud, not for himself, but for Rex. When the event ended and they walked out into the cool evening air, Cole looked at the sky and whispered, "We did it, boy." Rex looked up too, as if understanding that their journey had come full circle. That night, back at the base, Cole couldn't sleep. He stepped outside and Rex followed quietly. The stars were out again, the same as the night he had promised Rex he would come back for him. Cole sat down and looked up. "We've seen war, loss, and loneliness," he said softly. "But we also found something they can't teach. Trust that never dies." Rex let out a low, contented sigh and rested beside him, his head pressed against Cole's boot. They stayed that way for a long time, surrounded by silence, the kind that felt peaceful instead of empty. In the following months, Cole decided to take a new assignment, training future K9 handlers. His goal was simple, to teach them what Rex had taught him. "Don't train for obedience," he told them. "Train for understanding." Rex became part of the demonstrations, showing recruits what a true partnership looked like. The younger soldiers admired both of them deeply. Years later, after countless missions and successful rescues, Cole retired from active duty. Rex was older now, his muzzle gray but his eyes still bright. They moved to a quiet countryside home near the woods. Every morning, Cole brewed coffee while Rex waited by the door, eager for their daily walk. Sometimes local kids came by to play fetch with Rex. Cole always smiled, watching his old friend running across the field, tail wagging like he was still a pup. To anyone else, it might have looked like an ordinary life, but for Cole, it was a life full of gratitude. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, Cole sat on the porch, Rex lying beside him. "You know," Cole said softly, "you changed a lot of hearts, buddy. Not just mine." Rex lifted his head and pressed it gently against Cole's arm, his eyes warm and full of trust. Cole looked out at the setting sun. "We made it through everything, and somehow we found peace." The wind rustled softly through the trees. Rex gave one last soft bark, a sound full of love and loyalty, before laying his head back down, completely content. Cole reached down and patted his fur. "Good boy," he whispered. And as the stars appeared one by one, man and dog sat together in the quiet evening light, two souls bound not by orders or duty, but by a friendship that had survived the hardest storms and found its way home. It was the kind of story soldiers would tell for years, about the Navy SEAL and the dog who refused to attack him, not out of disobedience but out of love. A reminder that even in the hardest places on earth, kindness still wins.